Tragedy on Bournemouth beach. Police investigate the deaths of 2 teenagers. The 12-year-old girl and 17-year-old boy were pulled from the sea yesterday afternoon but could not be saved. It's still not clear what went wrong.
There was no physical contact between a vessel and any of the swimmers. There is no suggestion of people jumping from the pier or jet skis being involved.
Well, tonight, a 40-year-old man is being questioned by officers on suspicion of manslaughter amid reports a pleasure boat has been impounded. We'll have the latest from Bournemouth also tonight. Heading to court, the battle over the government's pandemic messages after the deadline passes to release them to the COVID inquiry. Call to give evidence to MPs. The boss of ITV will face questions at Westminster over events surrounding the Schofield affair. House prices are falling at their fastest for 14 years as rising interest rates make mortgages unaffordable for many. And
it's exciting. I know it's just a pile of rubbish, but once we sift through it, you just don't know what you're going to come across. And it's kind of like treasure hunt.
A sure treasure, how one couple struck gold with the stuff others throw away.
There's just so much stuff, isn't there? You wouldn't believe that people would throw it away. Nowadays, with the internet and things, there's so many places.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Police say they are investigating the deaths of 2 children after a major incident on Bournemouth beach yesterday afternoon. The victims, a 12-year-old girl from Buckinghamshire and a 17-year-old boy from Southampton, were among 10 people pulled from the water. Today, detectives insisted neither had jumped from the pier nor had been hit by a jet ski. But questions do remain about exactly what did happen. Tonight, a man in his 40s is still in custody, with reports claiming a pleasure boat has been seized. Our reporter Ellie Pitt has the latest.
An air ambulance heads towards the hospital. On the beach below, its crew had been trying to save the lives of holidaymakers pulled from the sea. Half-term tourists watched on as the emergency services carried out a major rescue operation. Iman was in the crowd. She'd taken her son to the seaside for the first time.
There was a lot of chaos, but everyone was just so concerned. There was a lot of panic, and I think everyone's first reaction was just the horror of what's happened.
At 4:30 yesterday afternoon, police officers and paramedics were called to Bournemouth Beach to reports of swimmers in trouble. As people on the beach became aware that others were in the water and had got into difficulty, they rushed in to try and help them. The emergency services pulled 10 people out of the sea. 8 of them were treated on the seafront, but 2 children, a 12-year-old girl and 17-year-old boy who weren't related, were taken to hospital, where they later died. Dorset police have arrested a man in his 40s on suspicion of manslaughter, and today tried to put an end to rumours about what happened in the water.
Early investigation indicates that there was no physical contact between a vessel and any of the swimmers at the time of the incident. I can also confirm there is no suggestion of people jumping from the pier or jet skis being involved.
But today, as thousands of families and groups of teenagers returned to the resort, the council faced calls to reassess their beach and pier safety measures, and the local authority leaders sought to reassure tourists at the start of the summer season.
At this point, we are thinking about the families that have lost their children. They came to the beach yesterday for a great day out and they've gone home without a child. That is our priority at the moment. Our staff will do everything they can to make sure that the beach remains safe.
As the early summer heat draws crowds to Bournemouth, the loss of 2 young lives here is a reminder of the danger as well as joy Britain's shores can bring. What still isn't clear tonight is exactly how the people came to be in trouble in the water. We understand there are reports that a pleasure boat has been seized this evening by police, but earlier in that press conference they were reluctant to give any detail or even say if a vessel had been involved in the incident. They simply said that the man in his 40s they have in custody was on the water at the time.
Ellie Pitt in Bournemouth, thank you. Now, the government says it will go to court over a request to pass on evidence in full to the coronavirus inquiry. The Cabinet Office had been ordered to disclose WhatsApp messages and diaries, including those from Boris Johnson, by 4 p.m. this afternoon. But as that deadline passed, it told the inquiry's chair it wants a judicial review. And it's emerged that even they don't have Mr Johnson's early COVID-era messages, as he changed his phone more than a year after the pandemic began. With more, here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
Chatting amicably with Ukraine's President Zelensky at a summit in Moldova, Rishi Sunak may have hoped to focus on European security today, but he couldn't escape questions about the COVID inquiry and whether he'd cooperate fully or not.
As I said, we've been long cooperating with the inquiry. Important that we learn the lessons of COVID so that we're well prepared in the future. Government's considering very carefully next steps, but it's confident in its position.
But as the 4 o'clock deadline to hand over all the messages requested passed, it became clear the next steps meant a court challenge. In a letter to the COVID inquiry chair, Baroness Hallett, the government wrote, "The Cabinet Office has today sought leave to bring a judicial review. We do so with regret. We consider there to be important issues of principle at stake here, affecting both the rights of individuals and the proper conduct of government. The request for unambiguously irrelevant material goes beyond the powers of the inquiry." As to Boris Johnson's WhatsApps during the pandemic, there was yet another twist. The Cabinet Office said it had been handed some material, but added, "We have not been able to verify the completeness of this material, and it does not cover the whole of the specified time period, but only the period from May 2021, when the former Prime Minister acquired a new phone." Today, he wasn't keen to talk about exactly what he had handed over yesterday.
Never interviews here.
But government sources made clear the court action wasn't to protect him, but over privacy issues more generally. For Lindsay Jackson, whose mother died of COVID in a care home, that didn't seem enough of a reason for further delay.
I mean, every single day when these things happen, these revelations come out, it's just more salt in the wound for the 250,000 families in this country who lost people to COVID.
One former government advisor says the danger is it looks like they have something to hide.
Ultimately, the way the public will look at this is that this is a government that set up an inquiry, is now not cooperating with it, is now trying to cover up for itself. And that's ultimately the thing that matters to the government. What do the public make of it? And I think they'll look at this and think it stinks.
Labour said Rishi Sunak was using a legal ploy to obstruct the inquiry. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
ITV's Chief Executive, Dame Carolyn McCall, is to face MPs over the Philip Schofield affair. She will be asked about the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding and complaints. Well, Mark McQuillan is with me. OK, when's this going to take place, Mark?
In less than 2 weeks' time, Mary, on June the 14th. It follows an intervention by the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, which says the Philip Schofield case raises fundamental issues about safeguarding and complaint handling. Dame Carolyn McCall will be questioned on both of those points. It follows the ongoing fallout from Philip Schofield's departure as a presenter on This Morning after he admitted to an unwise but not illegal affair with a much younger male colleague, one which he'd previously lied about to ITV and others. Now, just yesterday, Dame Carolyn said a lawyer would be looking into all of this to establish the facts and whether any policies at ITV need changing or strengthening. That was confirmed in a letter sent to, among others, Dame Caroline Dinage, who's the Media Committee Chair. She said in response today that when it comes to public service broadcasters, safeguarding and complaint handling should be open to scrutiny, and the public must have confidence in the robustness of those procedures. ITV is yet to comment about this latest development. OK, Mark McCullen, thank you. A Labour MP has been suspended by the party as it investigates what it called serious allegations of completely unacceptable behaviour.
Geraint Davis, who represents Swansea West, is accused of inappropriately touching female colleagues. A formal complaint has been made. Well, our political correspondent Harry Horton is following this. Harry, these are pretty serious claims, aren't they?
Yeah, they are serious claims. The Politico website has spoken to 7 women who claim that Geraint Davis made unwanted sexual advances on them. Most of the women are significantly younger than Geraint Davis, who is 63. One woman, who was 22, alleges that Geraint Davis bought her alcohol in Parliament and invited her back to his nearby flat. Another claims he sent her sexually suggestive messages. Now, at least 3 claims against Geraint Davis are reportedly made by fellow Labour MPs. One MP told ITV News today that Geraint Davis had boasted about bringing Russian prostitutes to Parliament. Geraint Davis said in a statement today he doesn't recognise these allegations. He said, "If I have inadvertently caused offence to anyone, then I am naturally sorry." A formal complaint was made to the Labour Party this afternoon. Labour described the allegations as incredibly serious and the party has suspended Geraint Davis pending an investigation.
Harry Horton at Westminster, thank you. Now, there are more signs of volatility in the housing market as new figures show prices falling at their fastest annual rate since 2009. They've been brought down by a sharp rise in the cost of borrowing, meaning mortgages are now more expensive for millions. Until recently, Swindon has been one of the places in the UK seeing the biggest rise in house prices. But as our business editor Joel Hills now reports, even there, the market has turned.
We've just reduced down now to 330,000.
Take us through the house.
Higher interest rates are making life harder for estate agents. An era of cheap money has come to an end. The owner of this house has just dropped the asking price in the hope of a sale.
I think if they go much higher, it will cause a lot of damage to the housing market. I think they've got to be very careful. If interest rates continue to rise, it's just going to keep a lot of people stuck where they are and unhappy.
Swindon is home to the Nationwide. Britain's biggest building society is also one of its biggest mortgage lenders. According to the Nationwide, house prices fell in May and were 3.4% lower than a year earlier. The price of the average home stood at £260,000. That's still £40,000 higher than in March 2020, just before lockdown began. But interest rates are now expected to rise higher and for longer to contain inflation. The markets are betting that bank rate, currently 4.5%, will peak at 5.5% at the beginning of next year.
Inflation is falling far more slowly than had been hoped. In the last week, lenders, including the Nationwide, have been repricing their mortgages. The interest paid on the average 2-year fixed rate deal is now 5.5%. A year ago, it was 3%. The cost of borrowing is surging, prompting people to repay their loans at a record rate.
Most economists expect house prices to continue falling, but there is a shortage of homes in the UK. And what happens next will depend to a large extent on what happens to unemployment.
It's got very low unemployment still. That means we haven't really seen any people being forced to sell their homes like we've seen in previous housing downturns. So if that remains the case, I think that a house price crash can be avoided.
So you've got an understairs cupboard here.
Kevin and Benny Fernandez are first-time buyers. They've been looking in Swindon for 6 months. In that time, their prospective mortgage repayments have risen by £150 a month. Prices are falling, but still out of reach.
Sometimes I feel like giving up. It's very sad. And it's even more sad thinking that I've been into this country for a long time now and then, still living in a rent house and can't afford to buy a house.
Swindon is famous for its magic roundabout, and mortgage rates are on something of a roundabout ride. The housing market may look confusing and perilous at the moment, but crashes are pretty rare. Joel Hills, ITV News in Swindon.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News tonight, the latest on the findings from the investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And how one couple is proving one person's rubbish really can reap rewards. But before all that, the father of a little boy has told ITV News of his pride as organ donation laws came into force in his son's name. From today, Northern Ireland has taken an opt-out approach to adult donations, as in the rest of the UK. The change follows campaigning by 6-year-old Dythan McGavin, himself in need of a heart transplant. Amy Lewis reports.
Whilst Dahi McGrahan has been waiting for his own life to be saved, he has been trying to save others. He has spent all but one of his 6 years on a heart transplant list. From today, new legislation that he and his family have campaigned for will ensure all adults in Northern Ireland are organ donors unless they opt out.
It's hard to believe, standing at the steps of Stormont, that Dahi's law is now live. You know, it's been such a huge feat over the last couple of years, and we're hoping that in the coming months and years that lives will be saved because of Dahi's laws.
In April, the Prime Minister recognised Dahi's campaigning with a special award. Under Dahi's law, all adults will now automatically be registered as donors unless they opt out, bringing Northern Ireland in line with the rest of the UK. Some groups are excluded from the new law, including children under 18, people who lack the mental capacity to understand the change, and visitors to Northern Ireland. Dahi joined the organ donation register 5 years ago today and is still waiting.
He is one of the longest waiting children waiting on the gift of a heart transplant, and every day we just have to make sure that we create the most precious of memories, because we just don't know what the future holds. So we want to ensure that Dahi is with us as long as possible, because he's just the love of my life.
Up to 15 patients die each year in Northern Ireland while awaiting a transplant. This little boy's tireless campaigning could have already helped save some lives. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
3 people, including a 9-year-old child, have died after a missile strike on Ukraine's capital. 16 other civilians were wounded in the attack in Kyiv early this morning. Debris fell on a children's hospital and a block of flats. 2 schools and a police station were also damaged. Now, officials investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann say it is too early to link items uncovered during searches last week. Madeleine was just 3 when she went missing from a holiday apartment in Praia de Luz in 2007. Our reporter Chloe Keady is in Portugal tonight. Now, Chloe, we knew, didn't we, that some items had been recovered and taken away during this search. When will we find out how significant they are, or indeed not?
Well, that's a good question, Mary. One of the things we learned from German prosecutors today is that it is going to take them some time to examine what they found here and establish whether there is indeed any link to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. This reservoir is about half an hour's drive from Praia de Luz, which is where Madeleine McCann went missing from 16 years ago. And police spent 3 days here last week intensively searching that outcrop of land using heavy machinery, using sniffer dogs, using drones. Now, we understand tonight from sources close to the Portuguese side of the investigation that about a dozen items were taken away, including samples of earth and also samples of fabric that were found buried in the ground. Now, the reason the Germans have been leading on this search is because they have in their custody a man called Christian Bruckner, who they believe is responsible for the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. He is a prolific sex offender, he is a convicted rapist, and he was known to spend a lot of time at this reservoir around the time she disappeared, although he has always denied having anything to do with it. Now, one of the other things German prosecutors said today is that they expect their investigation into him to take a very long time. So, to answer your question, Mary, I think it is unclear, 16 years on from Madeleine's disappearance, whether this latest development will provide her family with any answers.
Chloe Keady in Silves, Portugal. Thank you. Now, a body has been found in the search for a teenage girl at a dam on Merseyside. Emergency crews were called to Carmill Dam in St Helens just after midday after reports the girl had got into difficulties while swimming with friends. Her body was later recovered by officers searching the water, and her family has been informed. And the Prince and Princess of Wales are in Jordan for the wedding of the country's crown prince. William and Kate were greeted by King Abdullah and Queen Rania ahead of the ceremony between Prince Hussein and Saudi architect Raiwa Al Saif. Now, details have emerged of a rare and remarkable rescue by a Sherpa on the face of Mount Everest. He found a Malaysian climber in the so-called death zone at around 28,000 feet, just below Everest's peak on the south summit. For 6 hours, the Sherpa then carried the unconscious climber down on his back to Base Camp 4, where another guide shared the load to Base Camp 3, before a helicopter flew him to safety from the main base camp. Martha Fairley now on this heroic endeavour.
Wrapped in a sleeping mat to insulate him from the freezing temperatures, a Malaysian climber who very nearly didn't make it back from the top of the world. The man who was descending Mount Everest had fallen ill with altitude sickness. He was found disorientated and barely alive, clinging to a rope by a Sherpa who was taking his client to the summit. They abandoned their climb, and instead, with the casualty strapped to his back, Gelji Sherpa made the difficult journey down the mountain to Base Camp 4. Assisted by a fellow Sherpa, they dragged and carried him for 6 hours back to safety.
Because he was like almost about to die. He don't have oxygen, nothing with him. So I need to give it the oxygen to him, because I need to bring down to save him his life. I need to save him. That part was very dangerous part and very hard part, and all the rocky part I need to bring down to him on my back down to C4, and we are very glad to save his life.
At least 12 people have died on Everest since the climbing season began in March, the highest number for 8 years. Nepali tourism bosses say a successful rescue like this is very rare indeed, and almost impossible at such high altitudes. But the unnamed climber has flown back to Malaysia, owing his life to the quick thinking of 2 of Everest's fearless mountain guides. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
A newborn donkey who was stolen from a farm in Hampshire 3 weeks ago has been found safe and well. The police discovered the donkey, who's called Moon, at an address in High Wycombe last night and brought her home to the delight of her owners, who thanked members of the public for sharing the story on social media and helping to track little Moon down. And finally, many of us may not spare a thought for the rubbish we throw away. But for a couple from Derbyshire, wading through waste is a serious business. And now they have struck gold, becoming an internet hit and even arranging their dream wedding in the process. Amy Welch reports.
The sound of scrap is music, or rather money, to the ears of Mark and Melissa Drabble, who are making a living out of other people's trash.
Fresh trash. How are you feeling about what's just come in?
It's exciting. Melissa spends every day rifling through rubbish at their scrapyard in Buxton and says she's amazed at what some people put in the bin.
Oh, I kind of like that. It's a little old Chinese lantern, little cast iron one. It's probably the most sustainable way of recycling.
Magpie
so,
Mel.
Yeah, Magpie Mel here.
To be honest, I don't know where it keeps coming from, but it keeps coming.
This looks a really interesting find. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to my office and see what we can find out about it.
She posts their most impressive finds onto TikTok, which has more than 100,000 followers, and then sells what she's found for serious cash.
So how much would this be worth?
So once it's all cleaned up, I'm probably looking at about £600 to £650.
And salvaging other people's scrap helped the couple save thousands on their own second-hand wedding.
I kept coming across things every single day and I was like, I can use this for the wedding. So I used to paint it up. And before you knew it, I was like, right, everything came from the skips. And do you know what? It looks amazing by the time we finished it all.
And pre-loved really is their passion.
We are hoarders though, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that is kind of an aspect of being able to do this job.
It might come in handy, you never know.
So next time you plan to throw something out, maybe reconsider whether it's trash or treasure. Amy Welch, ITV News, Buxton.
And that is all from us. Weather's next, and Julie will be here at 10. But from all of us here on the evening team, bye-bye.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures moving in from the east, especially around tea time. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Good evening to you. We've had mixed conditions to start the new month, but brighter skies return as we end the week and feeling pleasantly warm in that sunshine. That huge area of chunky high pressure that we've had for so many days now, not going anywhere in a hurry, keeping things settled, quiet, fine and dry as we slide into the weekend. Not always sunny, the cloud coming and going, but a good deal of fine, bright weather. And in the sunshine, well, temperatures responding quite well. That is out of the breeze from the near North Sea. That'll keep things just a little chillier around those eastern coasts. As for the next few hours of split conditions, some late and low sunshine in places with clearer skies as we head into the night. More cloud cover further east, and that cloud becoming a little more extensive as the night wears on. The breeze keeping mist and murk at bay. And into a new day, we keep that split set up with the best of the clearer skies across Scotland, Cumbria, Northern Ireland, West Wales and the West Country here. Stunning sunshine from the word go, if quite chilly before that sunshine gets to work. Elsewhere, like today, disappointingly grey skies with early cloud, gradually nibbled away. So an improving situation, cheering up quite nicely into the afternoon. Highs of 22 degrees or so in shelter spots where we've got the breeze, a little cooler, a little fresher, and temperatures on the lower side again around those eastern coasts with the chilly breeze here, but generally more sunshine on offer. As for the weekend, things are looking promising again. Plenty of sunshine on the cards. Highs of 22 or 23 degrees out of the breeze. Where we've got the cloud, where we've got the breeze from the near North Sea, the temperatures just a little lower than we'd like at this point in early June. See you soon.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.